Welcome back to the channel. Today I've got a story that's sure to pull you right in. Today's story is titled The Price of Glory, a tale of ancient Rome. So sit back, relax, and let's dive right in. In 9 AD, the forests of Germania swallowed 3 Roman legions whole, and with them, the ambitions of an empire that believed itself invincible. Part 1. The Summons. Marcus Cassius Severus stood at the edge of his father's estate, watching the sun rise over the Campanian hills. The olive groves stretched before him in neat rows, their silver-green leaves catching the early light. At 28, he had known only peace, the Pax Augusta that had settled over the empire like a warm cloak after decades of civil war. His hands, calloused from overseeing the harvest and managing the family's holdings, had never gripped a gladius in genuine combat. The sound of hooves on the Via Appia drew his attention. A rider approached, his red cloak marking him as an imperial courier. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Such messengers rarely brought pleasant news. "Marcus Cassius Severus?" the courier asked, dismounting with practiced efficiency. "I am he." The courier handed him a sealed tablet. The wax bore the unmistakable mark of the Praetorian prefecture. Marcus broke the seal with his thumb and read the Latin inscription carved into the wax-coated wood. "By order of Caesar Augustus, Marcus Cassius Severus is hereby summoned to Rome to assume command of a cohort of the 3rd Gemina Legion. You are to report to the Campus Martius within 10 days. The glory of Rome demands your service." Marcus read it twice, his mouth dry. The 3rd Gemina had been in Germania, one of the 3 legions that had marched into the Teutoburg forest under Publius Quintilius Varus, one of the 3 legions that had never returned. "There must be some mistake," Marcus said, though he knew there wasn't. "I have no military experience beyond the required training." The courier's expression remained neutral. "The legions need officers, Dominus. Many need officers." He remounted his horse. 10 days. The penalty for ignoring an imperial summons is death. Marcus watched him ride away, the tablet heavy in his hand. Behind him, he heard his father's shuffling step. "So it has come," Gaius Cassius said. He was 63, his hair white, his face lined from years of managing the estate. "I had hoped the rebuilding would take longer. Father, I cannot lead men in battle. I know accounts in agriculture, not warfare." "You know duty," his father replied. "You know honor. The rest, if the gods will it, you will learn." He placed a weathered hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Your grandfather fought at Actium beside Marcus Agrippa himself. The blood of warriors runs in your veins, even if it has not yet been tested." Marcus looked at the tablet again. 3 legions, father. 15,000 men, all dead in 3 days. What wisdom can I possibly gain that will prevent such a catastrophe? "The wisdom to recognize when you are being led to slaughter," his father said quietly, "and the courage to speak truth to power when that moment comes." 10 days later, Marcus stood in the Campus Martius, surrounded by the organized chaos of military preparation. The field outside Rome's sacred boundary hummed with activity. Blacksmiths hammering at forges, quartermasters checking inventory, thousands of soldiers drilling in formation. The air smelled of metal, leather, and sweat. A grizzled centurion approached, his face a map of scars, his vine staff marking his rank. "Marcus Cassius Severus?" "Yes, centurion." "Quintus Fabricius Corvus, I'm to be your senior centurion." He looked Marcus up and down with undisguised skepticism. "You're the patrician they've sent to command our cohort." I am. Ever killed a man, Prefect? Marcus met his gaze. No, Centurion, I have not. Something that might have been respect flickered in Corvus's eyes. At least you're honest. Come. We have much to discuss in little time. The Emperor wants the Thene Gemina reconstituted within 3 months. We sail for Germania in the spring. They walked through the rows of tents, Corvus explaining the reorganization with clip deficiency. The Thene Gemina had been shattered, its eagle lost, its honor stained with defeat. Now it was being rebuilt from scratch. Veterans pulled from other legions, fresh recruits from Italia and the provinces, and officers like Marcus, chosen more for their family names than their experience. The men are frightened, Corvus said as they reached the cohort section. They've heard the stories. Trees so thick that armor is useless, Germans who attack like wolves, then vanish into the forest. Varus's head sent to some barbarian king as a trophy. Are the stories true? Every word. Corvus stopped and turned to face him. Listen, Prefect. I've served for 23 years. I was at Nauportus, at Lucca, at the Radian campaigns. I've seen good commanders and bad ones. The bad ones get their men killed because they're either stupid or arrogant. Which are you? Marcus considered the question seriously. Neither, I hope. But I'm ignorant, Centurion, and I know it. Corvus nodded slowly. Then perhaps there's hope. Come, meet your men. The cohort assembled in the cold February morning, their breath misting in the air. 480 men, organized into 6 centuries of 80 soldiers each. Marcus stood on a raised platform, feeling the weight of their collective gaze. These were not the soft sons of merchants and farmers. These were professional soldiers, many of whom had survived campaigns that would haunt Marcus's nightmares. Soldiers of the Thene Gemina, Marcus began, his voice carrying across the field. I will not insult your intelligence by pretending I am a warrior born. I am not. I am a farmer's son who happens to have a patrician name. Many of you have more combat experience in a single campaign than I will gain in a lifetime. He saw surprise on some faces, skepticism on others. But I make you this promise. I will learn. I will listen. I will not waste your lives on foolish gambles or vainglorious charges. And when we march into Germania, it will be as a cohort, not as a collection of individuals following a fool to their deaths. The silence that followed was heavy. Then, from somewhere in the ranks, a veteran spoke. That's more than Varus promised us, Prefect. A murmur of agreement rippled through the formation. Centurion Corvus will train us all, Marcus continued, myself included. We have 3 months to become a unit that can survive in those forests. I suggest we not waste a moment. As the men dispersed to their training, Corvus approached. That was well done, Prefect. You didn't promise them victory. Soldiers respect that. I won't promise what I cannot guarantee, Centurion. Then let me promise you something, Corvus said. If you continue as you've begun, listening more than speaking, learning before teaching, these men will follow you into the underworld itself. Marcus watched the soldiers begin their drills, the rhythmic clash of wooden practice swords filling the air. I hope, Centurion, that we will not need to go quite that far. Part 2. The Education of War. The weeks that followed were a crucible. Marcus rose before dawn and slept after dark, every hour consumed by the demands of transforming himself from estate manager to military commander. Corvus proved a harsh but effective teacher, drilling Marcus in everything from sword technique to siege warfare, from reading terrain to managing supply lines. "War is logistics, Prefect," Corvus explained one evening as they reviewed the cohort's equipment manifest. "Glory is for poets. Victory belongs to the commander who can keep his men fed, armed, and moving." Marcus learned to read the weather, to understand how rain would turn Roman roads to mud and make their heavy equipment a liability. He studied the reports from Germania, the ones that had survived the disaster, learning the names of tribal confederations, the Cherushi, the Marsi, the Bructeri. He learned that Arminius, the man who had orchestrated the ambush, had served in the Roman auxiliary forces, had been granted citizenship, had eaten at Roman tables while planning Roman destruction. Never trust an auxiliary completely, Corvus warned. Their loyalty is always conditional. But Marcus also met auxiliaries who had remained faithful despite the disaster, Gallic cavalry who had tried to warn Varus, German scouts who had fled rather than participate in the betrayal. He learned that loyalty was individual, not tribal, and that the prejudices of Rome could be as dangerous as German ambushes. In the evenings, Marcus would write letters to his father, describing his education in the arts of war. His father's responses arrived regularly, filled with advice drawn from his grandfather's experiences. Remember that soldiers are men first, warriors second. They fear death less than purposeless death. Give them purpose, and they will give you their courage. As spring approached, Marcus began to understand the weight of command. It was not about personal glory or martial skill. It was about 480 men who would follow his orders, who would die if he made mistakes, who deserved a commander who valued their lives as much as his own reputation. One night, unable to sleep, Marcus walked through the camp. He found Corvus sitting by a fire, sharpening his gladius with slow, methodical strokes. "Can't sleep, Prefect." "I keep thinking about the forest," Marcus admitted, "about being surrounded, cut off, unable to see the enemy." Corvus continued his sharpening. "Every officer feels that fear before their first real battle. The difference between a good officer and a dead one is what they do with that fear." "What do you do with it?" "I use it to stay alert. Fear keeps you from being stupid." He tested the blade's edge with his thumb. "The men who died in Teutoburg weren't cowards, Prefect. They were brave Roman soldiers led by an arrogant fool who ignored every warning, who marched his legions through territory he didn't understand, who believed Roman superiority was a shield against reality." You're saying Varus deserved his fate. I'm saying pride kills more soldiers than enemy swords. Corvus looked up from his sharpening. "You asked me once if I thought you were stupid or arrogant. I'll tell you now, you have the capacity to be neither, but Germania will test that capacity in ways you cannot imagine." In March, orders arrived. The Thedi Gemina would march north, joining the army assembling under Tiberius, the emperor's stepson and Rome's greatest living general. Their destination, Germania, where the eagles of the lost legions still lay somewhere in the trackless forests, where Arminius's confederation still threatened the Rhine frontier, where Rome's wounded pride demanded vengeance. The night before departure, Marcus made sacrifice at the temple of Mars Ultor, Mars the Avenger. He poured wine of the altar, burned incense, and prayed not for victory, but for wisdom. "Grant me the clarity to see true danger," he whispered. "Grant me the courage to speak truth. Grant me the wisdom to preserve the lives of those entrusted to my command." The priest, an old man with milky eyes, studied him. Most commanders pray for glory, young prefect. Glory is meaningless if my men are dead, Father. Then perhaps the gods will favor you, for they have seen enough of glory-seeking fools. Part 3. The Rhine Frontier. The march to Germania took 6 weeks. Marcus's cohort moved with the mechanical efficiency of professional soldiers, covering 20 miles a day when the roads were good, less when they weren't. They crossed the Alps through the Brenner Pass, descended into Raetia, and followed the Danube to where it met the Rhine. The Rhine frontier was a world away from the peaceful Campanian countryside. Massive fortifications lined the river, castra with walls of earth and timber, watchtowers every mile, bridge fortresses controlling the crossing points. This was the edge of civilization, where Roman order faced Germanic chaos across a river that had become a boundary between worlds. Marcus reported to the fortress at Vetera, where Tiberius maintained his headquarters. The general was 51, his face hard as carved stone, his reputation harder still. He had never lost a major battle, had conquered territories from Germania to Illyricum, and had been forced to abandon his beloved wife to marry Augustus's daughter in a political arrangement that pleased no one. The command tent was austere, military in its precision. Maps covered every surface, showing the maze of rivers, forests, and trails that comprised Germania. Tiberius studied Marcus with eyes that seemed to weigh souls. Marcus Cassius Severus, your father served with distinction in the civil wars. He did, General. And you have no military experience beyond basic training. That is correct, sir. Yet here you stand, commanding a cohort of the Thri Gemina. Tiberius's voice carried no judgment, merely statement of fact. Do you know why Augustus is so desperate to reconstitute the lost legions that he commissions inexperienced officers? To restore Rome's honor, sir? To restore Rome's fear. Tiberius moved to the map, his finger tracing the Rhine. The tribes across this river learned something in Teutoburg Forest. Romans can be beaten, Romans can be slaughtered. That knowledge spreads like disease. If we do not demonstrate strength, overwhelming, undeniable strength, the entire frontier will explode into rebellion. He turned back to Marcus. Your cohort will be part of the advance column. We cross the Rhine in 2 days. Our objective is to penetrate deep into Cherushi territory, burn their villages, seize their harvests, and demonstrate that the massacre of Varus's legions was not a Roman defeat, but merely a temporary setback. Marcus felt his mouth go dry. General, if I may speak freely. You may not. Tiberius's voice was ice. I have no interest in the opinions of inexperienced officers. You will follow orders, deploy as commanded, and perhaps, if the gods favor you, survive long enough to develop opinions worth hearing. Sir, Marcus saluted and turned to leave. Prefect, Tiberius's voice stopped him. One more thing. I knew Varus, arrogant, yes, stupid, certainly, but brave enough when it mattered. He died with his men by his own hand to avoid capture. Whatever his failures, he understood that much about honor. Remember that when the forest closes around you, the crossing of the Rhine was a military spectacle. 8 legions, nearly 40,000 men, assembled on the western bank, their armor gleaming in the spring sun, their standards snapping in the wind. Engineers had constructed 2 massive pontoon bridges, each wide enough for an entire cohort to march abreast. Marcus stood with his men, watching the first units begin the crossing. The water was still cold with mountain snowmelt, gray-green and fast-moving. On the eastern bank, the forest began, an impenetrable wall of oak and pine that seemed to swallow the light. Ever crossed a river to invade hostile territory, Prefect? Corvus asked beside him. You know I haven't, Centurion. Once you cross, everything changes. That forest isn't Roman. It doesn't follow Roman rules. The trees are so thick you can't maintain formation. The trails twist and double back. And somewhere in that green darkness, thousands of warriors are watching, waiting. You're trying to frighten me, Centurion. I'm trying to prepare you. Corvus gestured to the forest. 3 years ago, 3 legions marched into that. They never marched out. Their bones are still there, scattered among the trees. Their ghosts whisper warnings that arrogant officers refuse to hear. The order came to advance. Marcus's cohort stepped onto the pontoon bridge, the wooden planks creaking under the weight of 480 armed men. The water churned below, dark and cold. Marcus thought of the Styx, the river of the dead, and pushed the thought away. They reached the eastern bank and formed up on the cleared ground beyond. Then, at the trumpet's call, they marched into Germania. Part 4. Into the green hell. The forest swallowed them. One moment they were in open ground, the next surrounded by trees so dense that sunlight became a memory. The air grew thick with moisture and the smell of rot, fallen leaves, decaying wood, the fecund odor of a landscape that had never known the plow. The legions moved slowly, engineers clearing paths, scouts probing ahead. Every 100 yards they paused, waiting for reports, watching the shadows. The Germans were there. Marcus could feel their presence even if he couldn't see them. Occasionally, a scout would return with news of abandoned villages, of trails that led nowhere, of signs that large groups had passed recently. They're avoiding direct engagement, Corvus observed on the 3rd day, waiting for us to make a mistake. The column stretched for miles, its formation broken by the terrain into vulnerable segments. Marcus kept his cohort tight, refusing to let gaps open between centuries. He had studied the reports from Teutoburg obsessively. Varus had allowed his legions to stretch for 15 miles, had permitted civilians and baggage trains to mix with fighting troops, had grown careless in territory he believed pacified. On the 5th day, the attacks began. They came without warning, a sudden flight of spears from the tree line, striking down 6 soldiers before anyone could react. Then, the Germans were gone, vanished into the forest before the legionaries could form defensive positions. "Sound recall!" Marcus shouted. "Testudo formation! Close ranks!" The centuries locked shields, creating armored boxes that bristled with pila. But there was nothing to throw at. The forest was silent again, as if the attack had been imagination. "Collect the wounded," Marcus ordered. "Corvus, how many did we lose?" 4 dead, 3 wounded. Clean ambush. They knew exactly where to strike. Over the following days, the pattern repeated. Small, vicious attacks against isolated segments of the column. Never enough to cause serious damage, always enough to fray nerves and slow progress. The Germans were bleeding them, testing them, waiting. Tiberius responded with characteristic ruthlessness. The army moved methodically through Cherushi territory, burning every village they found, destroying every storehouse, cutting down every field of grain. The message was clear. Defy Rome, and Rome will turn your homeland into ash. But the villages were empty. The granaries had been emptied before the legions arrived. The enemy remained invisible, somewhere in the endless trees, watching and waiting. On the 10th day, Marcus's cohort was assigned to a foraging expedition. A patrol had discovered what appeared to be a substantial farm complex 3 miles north of the main column's route. Tiberius wanted it investigated and, if viable, stripped of supplies. Marcus assembled his men in the pre-dawn darkness. We move fast, we secure the site, we assess what's there. If it looks like a trap, we pull back immediately. No heroics, no risks. Clear? The sentries acknowledged understanding. They moved out as the first light touched the treetops, following a trail that wound through increasingly dense forest. The farm complex appeared suddenly, a clearing of perhaps 10 acres containing several large structures built in the Germanic style, surrounded by fields that had recently been plowed. Too convenient, Corvus muttered. Too exposed. Marcus agreed. Something about the site felt wrong, too perfect, too inviting. But the structures needed to be checked. 1st and 2nd centuries secure the perimeter. 3rd and 4th enter the buildings. 5th and 6th maintain reserve position. Move carefully. The men advanced into the clearing. The buildings were indeed empty, but showed signs of recent occupation. In one structure, they found stores of grain, not huge amounts, but significant. In another, weapons, dozens of spears, shields, even some Roman equipment that had clearly been taken from dead legionaries. It's a supply cache, one of the centurions reported. They've been stockpiling for... The whistle of arrows cut him off. Then the tree line erupted with hundreds of German warriors, screaming war cries, charging toward the exposed sentries. "Testudo! Testudo!" Marcus screamed. "Fall back to the tree line." But 2 sentries were trapped in the clearing, too far from cover. Marcus saw the Germans closing, saw his men dying, and made a decision that would haunt him forever. 5th and 6th centuries with me. Wedge formation. We're going in. Corvus grabbed his arm. "That's suicide, Prefect." Marcus shook him off. "If we don't reach them, they're dead. Sound the advance." The trumpet rang out, and Marcus found himself running toward the enemy, his gladius in hand, 2 centuries of soldiers following him into hell. The world contracted to the thunder of feet, the screaming of men, the clash of metal on metal. The wedge hit the German flank like a hammer. Marcus's sword found flesh, then found it again. Men fell around him. He heard Corvus bellowing orders, felt someone pull him aside as a spear struck where his head had been. The trapped sentries were fighting desperately, their testudo formations buckled but holding. "Break through to them," Marcus shouted. "Form a corridor." They carved a path through the Germans, paid for every foot in blood. The trapped sentries saw the opening and broke for it, maintaining discipline even in retreat. The Germans pressed from all sides, sensing victory, but Roman training held. "Fight and withdrawal," Corvus roared. "Alternate centuries leapfrog pattern." They pulled back in stages, 1 century covering while another retreated, then switching. The Germans harried them every step, but couldn't break their formation. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, they reached the forest trail where the terrain favored the legionaries. Marcus organized a defensive position while counting casualties: 47 dead, 63 wounded, 15 critically. Nearly a quarter of his command lost in minutes. He found Corvus binding a gash on his arm. "We walked into a trap, Centurion." "We did." Corvus winced as he tightened the bandage. "But you got most of them out. That was good work, Prefect." "Was it?" "I led them in there. Those deaths are on my conscience." "Yes, they are. That's what command means." Corvus stood, testing his wounded arm. But so are the lives you saved. Remember both. Part Vivere, Lessons Written in Blood. The expedition pushed deeper into Germania over the following weeks, but the campaign's futility became increasingly obvious. The Germans refused battle on Roman terms, melting away before major force, striking only when opportunities presented themselves. Villages burned, but new villages could be built. Fields were destroyed, but the Germans had clearly moved their stores elsewhere. The legions were punishing empty air. Marcus's cohort participated in several more engagements, each a variation on the first ambush. He learned to read terrain better, to anticipate where attacks would come, to never trust apparent opportunities. His casualties mounted slowly but steadily. 60 dead by the end of the third week, 80 by the end of the fourth. But his men also learned to trust him. He never took unnecessary risks. He never sacrificed their lives for glory. When they were in danger, he was there, fighting beside them. The patrician who had arrived knowing nothing of war had become a commander who understood its most important lesson, that soldiers would follow an officer who valued their lives. One evening, Marcus was summoned to Tiberius's command tent. The general looked tired, older than his 51 years. Maps covered his desk, each marked with reports of ambushes, attacks, withdrawals. Your cohort has taken significant casualties, Prefect. Yes, sir. 83 dead, over 100 wounded. Yet your centurions speak highly of you. They say you fight with your men, that you don't waste lives. Tiberius studied him. Have you learned anything in these weeks that might be worth sharing? Marcus chose his words carefully. I have learned, sir, that Germania cannot be conquered by burning villages. The tribes are too mobile, too willing to trade space for survival. We can hurt them, but we cannot hold them. And what would you suggest? Withdrawal, admitting defeat? No, sir. I would suggest we change the nature of the war. Instead of trying to conquer and hold territory, we should establish a defensive frontier, support friendly tribes, and make it clear that attacking Roman interests brings swift and terrible retaliation. But we should stop pretending that Germania can become another Gaul. Tiberius was silent for a long moment. You know, of course, that Augustus will never accept such a policy. His pride demands revenge for Teutoburg. Perhaps, sir, but Augustus is 76 years old. His pride will not outlive him. The question is whether Rome's policy should be dictated by pride or by reality. Dangerous words, Prefect. True words, sir. Tiberius smiled grimly. You have grown during this campaign. When you arrived, you were a boy playing at soldier. Now you understand what war actually costs. He returned to his maps. We withdraw in 2 weeks. We've made our point. The tribes know Rome can strike deep into their territory. That will have to suffice. And the Lost Eagles, sir, the standards of the 7 Light 8 and Tiny 9 legions, still lost, still out there somewhere, mocking us. Tiberius's voice carried infinite weariness. Perhaps another general, in another year, will find them. Or perhaps they will rust in some German shrine, a reminder that Rome is not invincible. Part 6. The Return. The march back to the Rhine took 3 weeks. The army moved more cautiously now, bloodied by a campaign that had achieved little beyond demonstrating that Germania remained unconquered. The forests that had seemed merely ominous on the advance now felt actively malevolent, as if the land itself rejected Roman presence. Marcus's cohort formed part of the rear guard, the most dangerous position in the column. The Germans, emboldened by the Roman withdrawal, launched increasingly bold attacks. Marcus lost 3 more men to ambush, another 7 to disease, the inevitable consequence of weeks in wet forests where sanitation was impossible and wounds festered. On the final day before reaching the Rhine, Corvus approached Marcus as he sat by the cohort's fire, writing in a leather-bound journal. "Recording the campaign, Prefect." "Recording lessons," Marcus replied, "so that if I survive this war, I might help others avoid my mistakes." "What mistakes?" "You've kept more men alive than most commanders would have." "I led them into that first ambush. I trusted my scouts instead of my instincts. I was too eager to prove myself." Corvus sat down beside him. "You want to know something? After 23 years, I've served under 17 different officers. You know how many I would have willingly followed into another campaign?" "How many?" "4. You're the 4th. Corvus poked at the fire with a stick. "Most officers fall into 2 categories: the glory seekers who get their men killed for personal advancement, and the cautious ones who are so afraid of failure that they accomplish nothing. You've found the narrow path between, brave enough to act, wise enough to think first. At the cost of nearly 100 lives, at the cost of far fewer lives than any other path would have demanded." Corvus stood. "Don't torture yourself, Prefect. We're soldiers. Death is our business. The question is whether we die for something or for nothing. Your men have died for something, for each other, for Rome, under a commander who cared about their survival. That's as good as it gets in this profession." The crossing back over the Rhine felt different from the crossing into Germania. Then, they had been an army of conquest, full of righteous fury and imperial pride. Now, they were simply men who had survived, carrying scars and memories they would never fully share with those who hadn't been there. Marcus stood on the western bank, watching his cohort file off the pontoon bridge. 397 men remained from the 480 who had crossed 6 weeks earlier. 83 dead, left in German soil or cremated in hasty funeral pyres. Each name was inscribed in his journal, each face burned into his memory. A dispatch rider approached. "Marcus Cassius Severus, Prefect of the 3 Gemina?" "I am." "Orders from Rome, sir. You are to remain with the frontier forces. The Thana Gemina is being permanently assigned to the Rhine defense." Marcus nodded slowly. Not a surprise. The Legion needed time to recover, to integrate its losses, to become whole again. And the frontier needed experienced officers, not glory-seeking patricians fresh from comfortable estates. "One more thing, sir." The rider handed him a second tablet. "Personal communication from Caesar Augustus." Marcus broke the seal and read the brief message. "Marcus Cassius Severus, your father speaks highly of your service. I am told you fought with courage and led with wisdom. Rome needs such men on her frontiers. Serve well, and honor will follow." It was unsigned, but the imperial seal was unmistakable. Marcus felt a strange mix of pride and bitterness, honor. Rome's obsession, Rome's curse. How many men had died for honor? How many more would follow? But he also understood that honor, properly conceived, was not about glory or reputation. It was about duty fulfilled, promises kept, trust earned. His men had fought for each other, had followed him because they believed he would not waste their lives. That was honor that mattered. Part 7. Epilogue. The Long Watch. 3 years passed. Marcus remained on the Rhine frontier, commanding his cohort through seasons of peace and brief, sharp conflicts. He learned the rhythms of frontier life, the long watches, the careful patrols, the diplomatic negotiations with tribal leaders who might be allies today and enemies tomorrow. He learned that war was not glorious campaigns, but endless vigilance, that victory was measured not in territory conquered, but in borders held, in trade routes protected, in peoples who chose Roman peace over German chaos. He learned patience, diplomacy, and the art of knowing when to fight and when to negotiate. Corvus eventually retired, his 26 years of service complete. Before leaving, he clasped Marcus's arm in the soldier's grip. "You've become what Rome needs, Prefect, not a conqueror, but a guardian. The empire is full of men who want to expand it. It needs more men who want to preserve it. Will you return to Italia, Centurion?" "I will. I have a small farm waiting for me near Capua. I'll spend my remaining years growing olives and boring my grandchildren with war stories." He smiled. "Though I suspect my stories will be considerably less dramatic than theirs will be when they reach my age. The world is changing, Prefect. Rome cannot expand forever. Eventually, we must learn to be content with what we have." After Corvus left, Marcus found himself thinking often of that conversation. The empire was vast, wealthy, powerful, but it was also overextended, dependent on constant military success to maintain its image of invincibility. Teutoburg had cracked that image. Other defeats would follow. The question was whether Rome would learn from its failures or repeat them endlessly, spending lives in pursuit of an impossible dream of universal conquest. In 14 AD, word reached the frontier that Augustus had died, succeeded by Tiberius. Marcus wondered what the new emperor would do about Germania. Would he continue Augustus's quest for revenge, or would he accept the reality that some territories could not be profitably conquered? The answer came in the form of new orders. Tiberius, drawing on his years of frontier experience, decreed that the Rhine would remain Rome's permanent boundary in Germania. There would be no more attempts at conquest. The tribes beyond the river would be left to their own affairs, so long as they respected Roman interests. The lost eagles would remain lost, a reminder that empire had limits. Some called it cowardice. Marcus called it wisdom. On a cold November morning, Marcus stood at the walls of the fortress at Vetera, looking east across the Rhine into the forests where his cohort had fought and bled. The trees were bare now, skeletal against a gray sky. Somewhere in those forests, the bones of Varus's legions still lay scattered, mixed with German dead, in a testimony to the folly of arrogance and the price of imperial pride. But Marcus was no longer the inexperienced officer who had crossed the Rhine 4 years earlier. He had learned war's true lessons, that courage without wisdom was waste, that glory without purpose was vanity, that the greatest victory was sometimes knowing when not to fight. His cohort had been rebuilt again, filled with new soldiers who had not fought in a great campaign. But the traditions held, the discipline, the mutual trust, the understanding that they existed to protect, not merely to conquer. A messenger approached, carrying orders for the day's patrols. Marcus reviewed them, approved them, and sent the man on his way. Another day on the frontier. Another day of watching and waiting, of preventing wars rather than winning them. He thought of his father's estate in Campania, of olive groves and peaceful hills. Someday he would return there, but not yet. Rome needed guardians on her frontiers, men who understood that true strength lay not in endless expansion, but in knowing what to defend and how to defend it. The Rhine flowed past the fortress, gray-green and eternal, marking the boundary between Roman order and German freedom. Marcus had learned to respect that boundary, to understand that on its far side lived peoples who valued their liberty as much as Romans valued their empire. Perhaps, he thought, that was the final lesson of Germania, that Rome could not conquer everyone, that some peoples would always choose freedom over peace, chaos over order, the uncertainty of their own governance over the security of Roman rule. And perhaps that was acceptable. Perhaps empire need not be universal to be great. Perhaps wisdom lay in understanding that borders could be both strong and stable, that Rome could be powerful without being infinite. The sun rose higher, burning through the morning mist. On the river, a fisherman in a small boat cast his net, indifferent to empires and armies, concerned only with the day's catch. Marcus watched him for a moment, envying his simplicity, his freedom from the burden of command. But command was Marcus's burden now, and he would bear it, not for glory, but for duty, not for conquest, but for protection of the men who trusted him and the civilization they represented. Below him, the fortress came to life with the routines of military discipline, sentries assembling for morning inspection, quartermasters distributing supplies, engineers checking the fortifications. The machinery of empire, functioning with the precision that had built Rome from a single city to master of the known world. Marcus turned from the wall and descended to join his men. There was work to do, patrols to organize, reports to file, the endless administrative tasks that consumed more of a commander's time than combat ever did. But in those mundane duties lay the true strength of Rome, not in dramatic victories or glorious conquests, but in the patient, persistent maintenance of order against chaos. Part 8. Ghosts and Choices. That winter was particularly harsh. The Rhine froze solid for the first time in a decade, creating a natural bridge that eliminated the protective barrier the river normally provided. Marcus doubled the guard rotations and sent additional patrols ranging along the eastern bank, watching for signs of German movement. In late December, one of these patrols returned with unexpected news. They had encountered a lone German warrior, wounded and half frozen, who claimed to have information valuable to Rome. He asked to speak with a senior Roman officer, offering trade, intelligence for protection. Marcus met the man in a guarded room within the fortress. He was perhaps 30, his body carrying the scars of many battles, his eyes holding the wariness of someone who had survived by his wits. He spoke Latin well, though with a heavy Germanic accent. "I am Wadgar of the Bructeri," he said. "I served under Arminius at Teutoburg." Marcus felt his blood go cold. "Then you participated in the massacre of 3 Roman legions." "I did, and I've regretted it every day since." Wadgar's voice was steady. "I was told we were fighting for freedom. Instead, we unleashed a cycle of violence that has destroyed my people. Arminius promised us peace after victory. What we got was years of Roman retaliation, burned villages, slaughtered families. The forest is full of widows and orphans. Why come to us now? Because Arminius is planning another attack, a major one this spring when the ice melts. He has assembled a confederation larger than the one at Teutoburg, Cherushi, Chatti, Marsi, even some of the Suebi from the east. He means to drive Rome from the Rhine entirely." Marcus studied the German carefully. This could be a trap. You could be feeding us false information to make us overreact, to pull troops from other sectors. I could be, Wadgar agreed. But I'm not. Look at me, Roman. I'm a dead man either way. If Arminius discovers I've come to you, he'll kill me and my entire family. If you don't believe me and his attack succeeds, I die in the fighting. My only hope is that you trust me enough to prepare, that Rome defeats Arminius so completely he can never threaten my people again. Your people betrayed Rome. Some did. Many didn't. The tribes aren't unified, Roman. We never have been. Arminius united us through fear and pride by convincing us that Rome would enslave us all. But Roman slavery looks better every year compared to endless war. Wadgar leaned forward. I have sons. I want them to grow up farming, not fighting. I want them to have the chance at peace that I never had. Marcus made a decision that would determine the fate of thousands. Tell me everything. Troop numbers, attack routes, timing. If you're lying, I'll hunt down everyone you've ever loved and crucify them along the Via Appia. If you're telling the truth, I'll give you and your family Roman citizenship and land south of the Alps, far from Germanic politics. Wadgar nodded slowly. Fair terms. I accept. Over the next 3 hours, Wadgar detailed Arminius's plans with the precision of someone who had attended the war councils. The attack would come in early April, targeting 3 frontier fortresses simultaneously. The Germans would cross the ice while it was still solid, overwhelming the garrisons before reinforcements could arrive. With those fortresses taken, they would control key river crossings and could raid deep into Gaul. Marcus sent dispatches immediately to every fortress along the Rhine, to the provincial governor in Moguntiacum, and directly to Tiberius in Rome. The warning went out. Be prepared, reinforce the vulnerable points, maintain maximum alertness. Then he waited, knowing that if Wadgar was lying, he had just weakened Rome's defenses based on enemy deception. But if Wadgar was telling the truth, he had given Rome the opportunity to turn ambush into counter-ambush, to destroy the German Confederation before it could threaten the frontier. The reinforcements arrived in February. 2 full legions from Gaul, auxiliary cavalry from the Gallic tribes, artillery units with their massive ballistas. The Rhine frontier transformed into an armed camp. Every fortress prepared for siege, every patrol doubled. Corvus, hearing of the situation, came out of retirement to serve as an advisor. His farm could wait, he said. This was too important. Do you trust this German prefect? He asked as they reviewed the defensive positions. I trust his self-interest, Marcus replied. He gains nothing from lying and everything from truth. But I've prepared for both possibilities. If his information is accurate, we crush Arminius. If it's a deception, we're still well positioned to defend. You've learned well, Corvus pointed to the map. Look at this disposition. 3 years ago, you knew nothing of military strategy. Now you're thinking like a general. I had a good teacher. You had adequate teachers and exceptional judgment. That's rarer. April came, and with it, the thaw. The ice on the Rhine began to break apart, massive floes grinding against each other with sounds like distant thunder. Marcus stood on the walls each dawn, watching the river, waiting. On April 7th, the German Confederation attacked. They came exactly as Wadgar had predicted. 3 simultaneous assaults on the fortresses at Vetera, Novaesium, and Bana. But instead of finding surprised garrisons, they found fully manned walls, prepared artillery, and auxiliary cavalry hidden in the surrounding forests, ready to cut off retreat. At Vetera, Marcus watched the Germans approach across the breaking ice, thousands of warriors thinking they were achieving surprise. He let them get halfway across before giving the order. Artillery, commence firing. Cavalry, execute flanking maneuver. Infantry, prepare to sortie. The ballistas launched their first volley, massive bolts that could punch through 3 men in a line. The ice, already weakened by the thaw, cracked under the impact and the weight of the massed warriors. Hundreds fell into the freezing water, dragged down by their weapons and armor. The cavalry swept out from their concealed positions, cutting down the Germans who tried to retreat back to the eastern bank. The fortress gates opened, and 3 cohorts of legionaries, Marcus's among them, advanced in perfect formation, shields locked, javelins flying in disciplined volleys. The battle lasted 4 hours. By the end, the ice was red with blood, the river choked with bodies. The German Confederation broke and fled, leaving behind thousands of dead and all their credibility as a unified force. Arminius himself escaped, vanishing into the forest as he had done so many times before. But his power was broken. The tribes that had followed him, lured by promises of victory, turned against him when they saw the cost of his ambitions. In the aftermath, Wadger stood with Marcus on the walls of Vetera, looking at the carnage. "I have destroyed my people's champion," Wadger said quietly. "They will call me traitor for generations." "You saved your people from annihilation," Marcus corrected. If this attack had succeeded, Tiberius would have responded with total war. He would have depopulated Germania from the Rhine to the Elbe. Your sons would have grown up in a wasteland. Perhaps, but that won't make the songs any kinder. No, Marcus agreed. Wisdom rarely makes for good songs. Glory and tragedy are more poetic than prudent choices and lives saved. Will you honor your promise? Citizenship and land? I will. You and your family will leave for Italia within the week. You'll never see Germania again. Wadgar nodded. That may be the greatest gift of all. To be free of this place, these wars, this endless cycle of revenge and counter-revenge. He looked at Marcus. You're different from other Roman officers I've met. Most see us as barbarians to be conquered or killed. You see us as people. I see you as what you are. Men trying to survive in difficult circumstances, making choices based on limited options. Marcus paused. I've learned that Rome's enemies are often wiser than Rome's generals. The enemies know their own limitations. The generals often don't. Part nomen. The measure of success. Tiberius himself came to the Rhine frontier after the victory, traveling from Rome with unusual speed for an emperor. He toured the battlefield, reviewed the troops, and met privately with Marcus in the fortress's Principia. You saved the frontier, prefect, Tiberius said. The Senate will grant you honors, probably a triumph. I would prefer to decline, Caesar. Tiberius raised an eyebrow. That's unusual. Most officers would kill for such recognition. I didn't do this for recognition, sir. I did it because it needed to be done. A triumph would send the wrong message, that this was about glory rather than duty, about conquest rather than preservation. Interesting. Tiberius studied him with those calculating eyes. Tell me, what have you learned in your years on this frontier? Marcus chose his words carefully. I've learned that empire has limits, Caesar. That Rome cannot hold everything, cannot conquer everyone. I've learned that the greatest victories are often the wars we avoid, the enemies we convert to allies rather than corpses. I've learned that patience and wisdom preserve more lives than courage and aggression. Dangerous lessons for a Roman officer. True lessons, Caesar. Tiberius was silent for a long moment. You know that Augustus spent the last years of his life haunted by Teutoburg. He would wake in the night crying out, "Varus, give me back my legions." His pride never recovered from that defeat. I know, sir. I will tell you something that few know. On his deathbed, Augustus gave me advice. He told me to keep the empire within its current boundaries, to abandon the dream of universal conquest, to be content with what Rome already held. He said the disaster of Teutoburg had taught him that empire could become a curse if pursued beyond reason. And will you follow that advice, Caesar? I will, not because I fear defeat, but because I understand sustainability. Tiberius moved to the window, looking out at the Rhine. Rome needs officers who understand what you understand, Marcus. That true strength lies not in endless expansion, but in wise consolidation. I'm reassigning you to the Danube frontier. The situation there is complex. Tribes that could be enemies or allies, depending on how we treat them. You'll have the authority to make those decisions, to choose negotiation or combat as circumstances warrant. That's an unusual level of authority for a cohort commander, Caesar. Then I'm promoting you, legatus of the 15th Apollinaris. You'll command 5,000 men, and more importantly, you'll command the policy toward the tribes on our northern border. Marcus felt the weight of that responsibility settle on his shoulders. Caesar, I'm 32 years old with 5 years of military experience. There are dozens of officers more qualified. More experienced, Tiberius interrupted, not more qualified. Experience teaches what worked in the past. I need officers who can think about what will work in the future. Do you accept? Marcus thought of his father's estate, of the peaceful life he had once imagined. That life was gone, sacrificed to duty and circumstance. But in its place was something perhaps more important, the opportunity to shape Rome's future, to steer the empire toward wisdom rather than glory. I accept, Caesar. Part X, Legacy. Marcus Cassius Severus served on the Danube frontier for 15 years. He fought when necessary, but negotiated when possible, establishing treaties with tribal federations that held for generations. He built roads and bridges, established trading posts, and created a network of alliances that transformed the Danube from a barbarian frontier into a stable border. He never achieved the fame of generals like Julius Caesar or Pompey. No poet wrote epics about his campaigns. The Senate never granted him a triumph. But the tribes he dealt with remembered him as the Roman who kept his word, and the soldiers who served under him told their sons that Marcus Cassius was the reason they survived to have sons. In 29 AD, at the age of 47, Marcus finally retired from active service. He returned to his father's estate in Campania, where the olive groves still stood in their neat rows, where the Campanian sun still shone on peaceful hills. His father was gone, dead 3 years earlier. But the estate remained, maintained by freedmen who had served the family for decades. Marcus walked among the olive trees, feeling the years of warfare slip away with each step. A rider approached on the third day of his return. Marcus recognized the imperial seal before the courier spoke. Marcus Cassius Severus? I am. Message from Caesar Tiberius, sir. Marcus broke the seal and read. Marcus, you have served Rome faithfully and well. You have preserved lives, maintained borders, and demonstrated that wisdom is strength. I ask one final service. Write down what you have learned. Record your experiences not for glory but for instruction. Rome needs institutional memory, needs officers who can learn from the past rather than repeat its mistakes. Do this, and you will serve Rome more effectively in retirement than most generals serve in the field. Marcus looked up from the tablet, across the olive groves to the distant mountains. A final service, not a campaign or a battle, but the sharing of lessons learned, the attempt to make the future wiser than the past. He could do that. Over the following years, Marcus wrote extensively, not memoirs focused on his own achievements, but analytical studies of frontier warfare, tribal diplomacy, logistical management, and strategic thinking. His works were copied and distributed throughout the empire, becoming required reading for officers assigned to frontier commands. One section, written late in his life, became particularly influential. The essence of Roman power is not found in victory, but in sustainability. We can defeat any enemy if we commit sufficient resources. The question is whether the cost of victory justifies the price, whether the territory conquered can be held, whether the glory achieved translates to genuine security. In my years on the frontiers, I learned that Rome's greatest weakness is also its greatest strength. We believe ourselves destined to rule the world. This belief inspires tremendous courage and sacrifice, but it also blinds us to the reality that universal empire is neither achievable nor desirable. The wise commander knows when to advance and when to consolidate, when to fight and when to negotiate. The fool mistakes aggression for strength and compromise for weakness. Rome has been served by both types. Our survival depends on producing more of the former and fewer of the latter. Marcus lived to see Tiberius die in 37 AD, succeeded by the young and erratic Caligula. He watched with concern as the new emperor embarked on increasingly bizarre military adventures, driven more by personal whim than strategic sense. He wrote private letters to officers he had trained, urging caution and patience, reminding them that their duty was to Rome itself, not to any particular emperor. In 41 AD, Caligula was assassinated by his own Praetorian Guard. The news reached Marcus on a spring morning much like the one on which he had first received his military summons 32 years earlier. He was 69 years old now, his hair white, his body marked by the accumulated injuries of decades of service. But his mind remained sharp, and he understood the significance of Caligula's death. The Principate, the system of government Augustus had created, was revealing its fundamental flaw. It depended on the character of whoever held power, and character was not inherited. The Praetorian Guard elevated Claudius, Caligula's uncle, to the purple. Claudius sent for Marcus, asking him to return to Rome to serve as an advisor on frontier policy. Marcus declined. "I have served Rome faithfully," he wrote in his response. "I have given my youth, my health, and my peace of mind to the empire's preservation. Now, in my final years, I ask only to tend my father's olive groves and watch the sunset over the Campanian hills. Let younger men guide the empire. I have taught them what I know. The rest is in the hands of the gods and their own wisdom." Claudius, to his credit, accepted the refusal with grace. He sent a reply thanking Marcus for his decades of service and granting him a generous pension. Marcus spent his final years in peaceful retirement, writing, corresponding with former students and subordinates, and watching the empire continue its complex dance of expansion and consolidation, glory and pragmatism, wisdom and folly. Epilogue: Echoes across time. Marcus Cassius Severus died in 47 AD at the age of 75. He was buried on his estate, beneath the olive trees he had loved. His tombstone bore a simple inscription: Marcus Cassius Severus, legatus of Rome, who understood that glory is fleeting, but duty is eternal. His writings survived him, copied and recopied, influencing generations of Roman officers. When Trajan became emperor in 98 AD and began his successful Dacian campaigns, he carried a copy of Marcus's treatise on frontier warfare. When Marcus Aurelius defended the Danube frontier in the 160s and 170s AD, he quoted extensively from Marcus Cassius's analysis of tribal diplomacy. The battles Marcus fought were forgotten. The campaigns he commanded became footnotes in military histories, but the lessons he taught continued to shape Roman strategy for centuries. In the forests of Germania, where 3 legions had perished under Varus, the bones eventually returned to the earth. But the warnings those bones represented, that empire had limits, that pride could be fatal, that wisdom sometimes meant accepting what could not be conquered, echoed through Roman consciousness. The eagles of the 17th, 19th, and 19th legions were eventually recovered, some by Roman expeditions, one by diplomatic exchange, others found decades later by farmers plowing fields. But they were never again carried into Germania. The Rhine remained Rome's boundary in the north, as Marcus had predicted, as Tiberius had decreed, as reality demanded. And somewhere, in the institutional memory of Rome, in the training of officers and the planning of campaigns, the ghost of Marcus Cassius Severus whispered his fundamental truth, that the greatest victory was not conquest but preservation, that the highest duty was not to extend empire but to maintain it, that glory meant nothing if purchased with the wasted lives of soldiers who deserved better leadership. In 27 BC, when Augustus had transformed Rome from republic to empire, he had promised unlimited expansion, universal dominion, eternal glory. In 9 AD, the forests of Germania had revealed the lie in that promise, and in the decades that followed, men like Marcus Cassius Severus had learned to separate fantasy from reality, pride from wisdom, the rhetoric of empire from the requirements of actual governance. Rome would continue for centuries more, sometimes wise, sometimes foolish, sometimes expanding, sometimes contracting. But in its better moments, in the decisions of its wiser leaders, the lessons Marcus had learned would resurface. That empire was not an end in itself, but a means to order. That borders could be strong without being infinite. That Roman power was best expressed not in conquest, but in the patient, persistent maintenance of civilization against chaos. The olive trees on Marcus's estate continued to grow, year after year, century after century, their roots drawing sustenance from the soil that held his bones. And if trees could remember, they would recall the man who had chosen their peaceful shade over the bloody glory of endless war, who had understood that the greatest victory was simply to survive with honor intact, duty fulfilled, and conscience clear. The end.